Have you ever thought about this? What if the words we've lost are actually more important than the ones we use every single day? Well, we're about to dive into the story of a nearly forgotten dialect, a kind of linguistic time capsule that opens a window into an older, purer form of the Korean language.
Okay, so at first glance, this just looks like a map showing different ways to say the word chick in Korea, right? But what if one of these isn't just an accent? What if it's something more, like a key unlocking a form of the Korean language that's been, frozen in time?
And that is the heart of our story today. We're zeroing in on a single dialect from a place called Kwangdeok-myeon in North Korea. And it's not just any dialect, it's like a linguistic time capsule, preserving a piece of Korean heritage that has, for the most part, been lost.
You see, the people who kept this dialect alive were speaking the way their families did back in the 1940s and 50s. This was before modern media and highways started to make everyone sound the same. What that means is we're hearing something that isn't just different, it's a direct line to how these communities saw their world, a view passed down for generations. Okay, so the big question is, how on earth did this linguistic time capsule survive? Well, to understand the language, you first have to understand the land. The geography of this place is the real key to why this unique dialect was able to thrive for so long.
Kwangdeok-myeon was, for all practical purposes, an island on the mainland. Seriously, it was surrounded by 3 major rivers and then walled in by high mountains. It was geographically cut off from pretty much everywhere else. And that isolation allowed a totally unique vocabulary to grow, one that sprouted right from the land and the people who lived there, completely untouched by outside influences.
And what makes this vocabulary so incredibly special is that it's packed with what we call pure Korean. These are the original native Korean words, not loanwords, and especially not terms built from Chinese characters known as Hanja, which later came to dominate the peninsula.
You can see it in action right here. The village names weren't just abstract labels, they were literal descriptions of what was there. So the formal Hanja-based name Nengjong-dong was just Chan-umul in the local dialect, which literally means cold well village. Yulmok-dong was Bam-namu-gol, chestnut tree village. The language was a living, breathing map of their world.
But this intuitive, descriptive way of speaking, it was about to face a massive challenge. The widespread adoption of Chinese characters began to cast a long shadow over these native words, and it started pushing them out of use.
A new standard started to take over, one based on Hanja, or Sino-Korean words. This was the language of administration, of official records. And because these pure Korean words were mainly just spoken, not written down, they began to fade away, gradually replaced by this new, standardized vocabulary.
And just how deep did that change go? Well, the number is pretty staggering.
Over 70%. Think about that. Even though Korea barely uses Chinese characters in its writing today, the vast majority of its vocabulary is still built from them. The original pure Korean words are still there, just buried deep beneath layers of linguistic history.
But here's the really cool part. Thanks to the preservation of dialects like the one from Kwangdeok-myeon, we can actually start to rediscover some of these linguistic treasures. We can hear the words that have been brought back to life. First, let's take a look at how this dialect named the natural world, the things people saw and felt and interacted with every single day. You can hear these subtle but really meaningful differences. The standard word for sky, hanil, was simply hanil. A tree, namu, was nangu. A stone, dol, became dolmai. They just sound more elemental, don't they? A little closer to the sounds of the land itself.
This unique vocabulary didn't just stop at the front door either. It was woven right into the fabric of everyday life, especially when it came to food and the home.
So here, the word for corn, uksusu, was gangnungi. The spoon you ate with wasn't a sutgarak, but a supgal. And listen to this. Something as basic as soybean paste, doenjang, was called toljang, literally earth paste. I mean, the connection to the land is right there in the word.
This unique language even shaped the most personal words of all, the words used for family and for the community. Even here, you can see that unique local flavor. Mother wasn't iomoni, but the softer iomoni. The youngest child, the maknae, was affectionately called the makdangi. Every single term, from your closest relationships to the wider community, had its own distinct character.
But bringing these words back isn't just about nostalgia. It gets to the very heart of why the Korean alphabet, Hangul, was created in the first place.
This really gets to the core of the issue. For centuries, the Korean alphabet, Hangul, has often been used just as a tool, a phonetic script to pronounce words that were actually derived from Chinese. But it was created to be a voice, a way to write and express the unique soul of the Korean language itself.
So bringing back these pure Korean words is about so much more than just preserving a dialect. It's about letting the Korean alphabet finally fulfill its true purpose, to be a complete system for expressing the Korean language in its own right.
So, why does all of this matter? Because reviving these words isn't just an academic exercise. It's about preserving a unique piece of cultural heritage. It's about reconnecting a language to its native roots and fulfilling the original vision for Hangul. And maybe most importantly, it's about learning to see the world a little bit more like our ancestors did.
And that leaves us with a final thought to chew on. After centuries of speaking in a vocabulary that was largely borrowed from another culture, what happens when a language finally gets the chance to speak in its own voice? What does it hear when it truly listens to itself?